Okay. So let's begin. Okay. So this is the final workshop, right? So it's a series, right? So the first one we started with LinkedIn to build our personal brand and to build a professional profile. And then we did our resume, right? Because you need to send your resume, to apply for jobs. And then the final step is your interview. Okay. So today my goal is to give you an introduction and some perspective and some strategies. Oh, it's your first one. Okay. Some strategies about doing interviews, because doing an interview is a skill, right? And very often it's a skill that people don't practice or have a lot of experience. So if you are well prepared for it, you can set yourself apart from the rest, right? So the way you interview, the way you answer the questions can make a big difference in their decision. Okay, so let's begin. So Sandra, it's your first time, so you don't know me. My name is Noel Grant Mason. Okay, I studied international business in Boston at Northeastern University, which included finance, accounting, marketing, statistics. Then I worked for 5 years in a multinational pharmaceutical company, and I was sometimes part of the hiring process. Like, so when we were interviewing people to join our team, I was involved. And so I do have experience in this, and I have experience also in finding jobs. I've been teaching English for over 10 years. This is my 4th year at the Extranal, and I'm also a small business owner. So I tell you these things to let you know that I do have experience, and so what I'm telling you is true. For the most part, I believe it's true. Right? All right, so let's begin. So you mentioned that the resume gets you the interview. Okay, so when you write your resume, the only goal with the resume is so they call you for the interview. Okay, and then the interview is what gets you the job. That's where you get to really sell yourself. All right, so your resume may not have all of the information, right? But in the interview, you get to expand upon what you're saying and then add also your personal touch. And so for the interview, you want to be prepared, right? And perhaps we think, oh, but how do I know what they're going to ask me? But there are some questions or some style of questions that are frequently used, okay? And so by being prepared for the common questions, that you'll do better, and then also knowing how to answer certain kinds of questions will help you to be able to think on your feet. Okay, so today we're going to review some of these questions, and I'm going to teach you to the best of my ability in the short amount of time we have how to prepare yourself and how to answer certain kinds of questions. Before we begin, are there any questions or any concerns? Anything you need addressed now? Okay. All right, so since we're so few along the way, feel free to ask questions, okay? Just raise your hand, right? We're only 5 people, so we can make this more personalized. All right, so let's begin. All right, when you interview, okay, basically, they're looking for some things, all right? They want to know, one, can you do the job, right? Do you have the skills? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the qualities to do the job? Obviously, that's the most important one. The next one is, can you be trusted on? Can they count on you? Right? And so in the heat of the moment, in the real world, when you're actually working, are you someone that they can trust, that they can depend on? And number 3 is more personal, right? Because generally, we want to work with people that we get along with and that we like, right? Or people that we think will fit in our culture, right? Because we're with our coworkers more than we're with our families, for the most part, right? And so they want to know, would you be a good coworker? Or would it be enjoyable to work with you? Right? I'm going to be with you 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day from Monday to Friday, all day, right? So the idea too is that we want to get along. And so they're not only asking about your skills, which is very important, but they're also trying to figure out, are you a good person? Are you good to work with? Okay? And will it be enjoyable? So these questions you want to keep in your mind when you're thinking about the answers. Okay, so you want to answer these doubts for them. All right, so let's go to the first one. All right, almost always, the basic question is, the first question is, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? All right, This is your elevator pitch. So what do they want to know? So each question, I'm going to give you the grandma, right? It's like an old lady. So what does she want to know? And then I'm going to give you some tips, okay? What to do or what not to do, okay? Due to time, I can't give you actual answers, but I'll try and do my best. Hi, Cesar. All right, so what they want to know when they ask you this question is your elevator pitch, right? And basically, what is your professional and academic background that makes you appropriate for the position? Okay, so just a quick thing. Hey, my name is Graham Mason. I studied international business at the Northeastern University. In my studies, I studied finance, I studied marketing and accounting. I've also worked for 5 years. I've also been part of the UN model delegation. My extracurricular activities have included this, and this. I've also done courses and blah, 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 blah. And my passion in my major is the emphasis on, for example, supply chain and logistics. I really enjoy doing things like that. Okay, so it's a short answer. It's a short answer. And so now you have the X, right? So the X's are what not to do, and the green checks are what to do. We have a clock here, right? So you don't want to tell your whole life story. All right, this is basically a professional answer. Focus on your professional qualifications, on your education. Don't talk too much about your personal life yet, unless they ask, okay? So for example, you don't need to tell them about your dog, about your cats, about your gorgeous boyfriend, right? About things like that. You want to leave that stuff out for now. Of course, you're going to mention your university program, what you in Spanish call your career, right? And then if you specialize in something or if you have a special interest in something, okay, you can mention that. And then, if possible, some examples, right? Oh, I'm really interested in international relations. For example, I'm part of the UN model delegation at the Extranal University. I'm one of the team members. I've been doing this for 3 years. And it's something that I really enjoy. And in my career, I hope to expand into that realm, into that world. It's a short answer, okay? It's about 1 minute. It's a short answer, and it's about 1 minute, okay? So that's like my overview of the things. So these are just things to keep in mind. All right. So any questions on number 1? Since we're so few, hi Sophie. Since we're so few, you're welcome to ask questions.
So it would be like saying out loud your resume?
Yeah. Basically your studies, your training, and your experiences. Now since you're students still, this can include any internships or include any coursework that you've done. Like I know you guys do some big projects, for example. Oh, in the university, we did this project doing a financial valuation of Bavaria, and it went really well for me. And it's something that I really enjoy doing, and I learned how to evaluate a company based on current models or design Excel sheets or something like that. But yeah, they want to, it's basically an introduction. And the question is, do you meet the technical requirements of the job? And you will have more time later to expand, but it's your short introduction of who you are professionally. Okay. So far, so good?
Yeah.
All right. Number 2. This is an important question because it's a very easy way to differentiate yourself from the crowd. Okay, so imagine they're interviewing 10 people. They're all from the Extranal, right? And they say, why do you want to work here? Why do you want to work here at Bancolombia? Why do you want to work here at Apple? Why do you want to work here at Disney? Okay. And now, what they want to know in this question, like each question has a psychology and a goal behind it, right? They want to know, did you do your homework? Okay, did you do your homework? And I'll explain what that means. They want to know, do you actually know about the company? And are you truly interested in working for them? Okay, so they want to know that if you really do want to work for them, or if you simply threw out 100 applications and just prayed for any job to get there. Okay, and now that could be the case, but your answer here can make a big difference on whether or not and how they perceive you. Right? And here's what we include in that answer. Okay. So oftentimes I hear an answer, right, which is generic, right, or it's obvious, right? Oh, I want to work for Disney because I've been watching Disney movies my whole life. Right? Or I want to work for Bavaria because it's the largest company in Colombia and everybody works there and all my friends work there and I just know it's a good place to start my career. Okay, so you want to avoid a general or a generic answer like that. Right? The best way to answer this and the best way to make an impression that gives them confidence in you is to give them some information that they would be surprised that you know. Okay? So for example, before you interview somebody with somebody, you should research the company. Now research, for example, on their webpage, look at the current news on what's going on with that company, and look for something that's happening that is new, that is current, and that is important. Okay? Maybe even a bit obscure. For example, a new project that they are working on, right? Or a company shift. Maybe they're changing the managerial hierarchy, or maybe they are shifting the groups, right? Maybe they're restructuring the company, or maybe there has been a big management change or an operational change, or maybe there are some growth opportunities in their market that they're trying to leverage. Okay. And so what you want to do is highlight that. You mention that, right? You highlight that piece of information where they would go, wow, you really know about our company, right? You actually did research, and then say how you can contribute to that, okay? And then you're also going to show them you care. For example, why do you want to work for Extranal University? Oh, very good. Well, that's a good question. So I've been researching, and I know that the External University is now opening a new faculty, right? And it's called like language arts, right? It's called language arts. And I also know that the English department works with the finance faculty, the economic faculty, business administration, tourism, etc. And so with my background in business administration and everything that I studied, as well as the 10 plus years of teaching, and my experience in organizational structures, I believe that I could help you with this restructure. I could help you with creative ideas to help you create this new faculty, maybe offer new courses that you weren't expecting, or something like that. Okay, so something like that is not really common knowledge. Oh, the Extranal opened a new faculty, right? And so you want to do something like that. Okay, and again, the point is you want to show them that you did your homework, right? That you know about them and you truly are interested in working for them. And again, this is one of my favorite questions because it's a very easy way to differentiate yourself. Because most people are going to go, oh, I want to work for Bancolombia because, come on, it's Bancolombia, right? No, you want to give them some knowledge, right? A project or something that you can help with. All right, is that clear? So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay, I know I'm going fast, okay? So, I did send this document, all right? With the list of questions, and I'll be sending this presentation. But these are things that you can keep in mind, and online you can find a lot of information. All right, and this answer is about 1 to 2 minutes. It's about 1 to 2 minutes, okay? The reason I'm giving you times is because we often get nervous, right? In an interview, we get nervous, right? And so, one, being prepared, and two, having an idea of time. You sometimes when we get nervous, we talk too much. And we'll just talk and 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 talk, right? So this is just a good way to remind yourself, look, okay, 1 or 2 minutes, my answer should be succinct, right? And so that's why I'm giving you the timelines to let you know that your answers are pretty quick, right? An interview is going to be about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, all right? All right, ready? Next, number 3. Are you ready? All right, this one's quite easy. Valentina, are you good? I see you. Do you have a question or anything?
No, everything's good.
Okay. All right, so this one is generally about preparation, right? It's can you tell me about this particular experience on your resume? All right. And so they're going to have your resume and they're going to say, hey, I see that you were a member of the Findex Club, or I see that you published an article on this webpage, right? Or I see that you had an exposition in an art gallery, or that you did a project creating a pamphlet, for tourism for Colombia. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Right? And so in this case, right, you do have to in some way improvise, but you should be willing and you should be ready to talk about anything that's on your resume. Right? And generally, you want to talk about things positively. Right? And so the first one is, can you talk positively about your experiences? Right? People like positive people. Right? So even if it wasn't that great of experience, you do want to share it in a positive light. And then always use these questions to highlight how the experience makes you right for the job. Right? So you always want to bring it back to the job requirements and what they're expecting. Right? And so, in the ThinkVex Club, yeah, sure, yeah. So I'm a member of the ThinkVex Club, and we have to do this, and we have to analyze and read all these articles, and it has really made me a good editor, actually. Right? It's really made me a good editor, editing documents and paying attention to detail, and it's something that I see that you need for this job as well. And so this has given me great experience for this aspect of the job. Right? And it's also a chance to expand upon your resume, because your resume is quite dry. Right? So it's a chance to add your personality and to add any information that you want them to know. So just some quick tips. Always be prepared to talk about any of the experiences. They can ask about anything on your resume. Okay? And then always highlight how the experience applies to the job. And again, it's very easy to keep talking. Right? So just keep your answer to 1 minute or 2 minutes. Okay? 1 minute or 2 minutes, which is quite a long time if you start paying attention. Right? It's quite a long time. Because the idea with these times too is nowadays with our attention spans, we don't have attention spans anymore, right? So you want to use the time wisely, right? And make sure that they stay interested in what you have to say. All right. Ready? Number 4. All right. Now we get to the one that you've seen before, okay? Why should we hire you? Why should we hire you? So with my students, I go, here at Bancolombia, I have 100 people applying for this job. Right? Why should I hire you? And all of them have extranal degrees. Why should I hire you? Which is essentially, what are your strengths? What are your strengths? Right? What they want to know is, what can you do for them? What can you do for them? Right? Because a job is a negotiation. Right? They're hiring you to do something for them, right? So what can you do for them? What makes you the best candidate, more so than any others? Why do you stand out? Do you have what it takes? Do you have the qualities that they are looking for? Or why are you the best? Or why are you outstanding? And why should I hire you instead of one of the other candidates? Okay, so this is a very important question. You'll almost always hear it in some way. It may not be these exact words, but you almost always hear this question. All right. Now, a couple tips. All right. So don't use overused words that everyone else says. For example, I very often hear, "Oh, I'm a perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist." Right. So that's a weird answer. Right. It's a weird answer. Right. So instead of perfectionist, you can say, "Oh, I demand a lot of myself." Right. I require of myself, right, high quality work. I require that I do a good job. Right. And so we want to be careful of the words we use, because they can sound robotic or too prepared, right? Or sound like what we call a canned response. And also, in this case, don't be doubtful, right? This is your chance to shine, right? So you do want to be confident. And so the way to answer this question is pick about 3 things, right, that make you outstanding. Pick about 3 things that make you outstanding. All right? And there's a lot of activities on the AVAs that you can do, right? So you think about, okay, what are my 3 best qualities? And when you think about, for example, when you're in your group projects, right? What makes you stand out? Where are your strengths? What makes you really good at what you do? And think about those things. And they should highlight or accent your work ability and give the interviewer confidence, and then when possible, use examples. And also be human. Be human, right? I say that because with this kind of answer, right, it can be very robotic or prepared, but they do want to see your humanity. And maximum 2 minutes. Maximum 2 minutes. Maximum 2 minutes. So I'll give you a short example, right? So Noel, why should we hire you? Oh, well, honestly, I think I can think of 2 or 3 things that make me an excellent teacher. One is my ability to connect with students, right? In the classroom, I have been able to connect my students on a human level. And what this does as a teacher is allows me to reach them in ways beyond the academics and allows me to create classes or experiences that are practical in their lives. I think another thing I'm really good at is creativity, right? I'm really good, I'm creative. Like I'm always looking for new ways to do things. Even if I've done it 5 times, the 6th time, I'm going to keep always trying to find a better way to do these things, right? So I'm always trying to find more efficient and creative solutions to these problems, okay? For example, right, in my class, I created this virtual conference called Leaders of the Future, and it's really cool because the students get to present an academic presentation in a real world simulation. And so they leave my classroom with these experiences that they can lean on later in life. Okay, so something like that. You know what I mean? So like pick 3 things, right? 3 things, and then connect them to the job, right? Connect them because you're answering the question, what can you do for us and why are you the best, right? So you want to do that. And when you're human, right? When you can feel, when you make that person feel something, they're going to remember you. They're going to remember you. All right. Any questions on this one? Any
No,
questions?
no, even though you got me there because I would be the person that say perfectionist.
Yeah, almost everybody says perfectionist. Almost everybody does, which is why I mentioned it, right? Which is why I mentioned it. And when you say I'm a perfectionist, it sounds a bit egotistical, right? It sounds so. Before you go and say perfectionist or something else, try and think of a better way to say it. Try and think of a better way to say it, right? So that a perfectionist, right? I demand a lot of myself and others, right? Or I demand the utmost quality in my work and from my colleagues, like something like that. Any other questions on this one? Good afternoon, Carolyn, Paola, Hugo, Sandra.
Good afternoon.
All right. So number 4, that's number 4. Let's go number 5, which is related, okay? Which is related. What is your biggest weakness? Have you seen this question before? Have you seen this question before? What is your biggest weakness, right? Or biggest challenge, right? So if you work with Cesar or Ana Maria, you'll see this question as well, right? So if I'm interviewing somebody, right? If I ask Hugo, hey Hugo, what is your biggest weakness or what is your biggest challenge, right? There's a couple of things that I'm trying to find out. One, are you humble? Are you humble, right? Because everybody has a weakness. Everybody has a part of their personality that is not as good as others, right? That can cause challenges in your life. I know we do. We all have them, right? Another one is, are you honest, right? Are you honest? Right? I want to know, are you honest? And are you self-aware? Self-aware has to do with emotional intelligence as well, right? And it has to do with maturity. So someone who's mature, right, can honestly say, yes, I do have a challenge, I do have a weakness, and it's this. And I want to know if you can fix it or if it will impact your performance. All right, so here are some tips. Hi, Maite. Here are some tips that we can pay attention to. Okay, so don't lie. Okay, don't lie. Don't lie. That's number 1. 2, don't state something that would cause them to doubt you, right? Or cause them to go, oh, you know what? I really liked Sophie, but she says that she's not punctual, that she's always arriving late to work. And you know what? I don't know. I can't deal with someone like that right now. And obviously, don't say something horrible, like you're an alcoholic or a thief, even if it's true. But don't say something horrible, okay? So when you're thinking about what your biggest challenge is, pick something that is true, right? Obviously. And when you answer the question, just briefly mention the quality, okay? Don't spend so much time on it that that's all they remember. right? And focus more on the solution, because really what they want to see is that you're aware of it and that you're working on addressing it or have already addressed it, right? And if possible, maybe even mention a system that you have in place to minimize its impacts, right? So for example, someone could say, what is the biggest weekend? You know what? I think my biggest challenge is saying no. I take too much on, right? And I'm always saying, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. And what happens is I end up having too much to do, and I do all of my jobs half done, right? So that's something that I realized, in this course, or I realized in work. So now what I do in order to keep myself from saying yes all the time is I keep a list. I keep a running list, right? On my computer, it's always there. And I prioritize everything that I need to do by numbers, 1, 2, and 3, right? So the first things that need to be done, the essential tasks, I give them a 1. And then the next ones I give a 2 and then a 3. Until I complete my 1 tasks, I don't move on to 2. And if I don't complete 1, I don't go to 2. If I don't go 2, then I don't move on to 3. And if I need to, I will say no. So I've made a great effort in my life lately to start prioritizing, and if I need to, just say no. Okay? So something like that. So mention what your weakness is, or what your challenge is, but then spend more time on how you're aware of it and you have addressed it or are addressing it, or the system you have in place. Okay? So again, this shows maturity, it shows emotional awareness, and right? And there won't be any surprises to the interviewer, and they see that you are working it, so you're not going to give them any doubt. They're not going to go, Sandra was wonderful, but I don't know. That answer really, I don't know if I can trust her. Okay? Any questions on number 5? Any questions on number 5?
No, but I was wondering if I could give you an example.
Yes, please. Yeah, of course.
Okay. So what if I say something like, I have this need of being in control of everything? That would be a weakness, but like in a bad way, it would be a bad answer, even though I'm working on it.
Is that? I mean, it sounds like it's your true weakness. It sounds like it's your real answer, right? Yes.
Yeah.
No, that can be great. That can be a great answer. But maybe think about, let's go one step back. Why do you want to be in control? What is your underlying motivation?
Okay, so it would be something like, I give my weakness like an answer, but I try to explain how I'm working on it and why I feel like that.
Yeah, yes, but my question for you is, why do you want to be in control? What is the underlying motivation?
Okay, sometimes it's hard for me to rely on someone else while working.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I could say that because it sounds bad in teamwork things,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's the point of the question, right? I think if you're honest, right? If you're honest, as long as you're honest and you can show how you're aware of it and addressing it, that's okay, right? But for your answer, I would even go a step back. Like, it's hard to work in teamwork because why? Because I think you demand a lot, right, of yourself and others, right? You demand a lot of yourself and others. So instead of saying, I always want to be in control, right? Your underlying motivation really is that you want to make sure that the quality of your work is excellent, right? And when you depend on others, that puts that expectation at risk, right? So maybe don't say, I always want to be in control, but maybe, you know what? My weakness is I demand a lot of myself and others.
Okay.
I demand a lot of myself and others, and the reason is that because I really want to. I expect excellent quality work of myself, right? And so when I can't control certain situations, I get a little nervous. However, I am aware of this, right? And when I'm working in teams now, I have an honest conversation with them, and I help try and delegate the work in a way that eases my worries, right? And so they, what are you good at? What are you good at? What are you good at? Okay, you're going to be in charge of this. You be in charge of this, and then maybe I'll take it upon myself to review everyone's work before we turn it in.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like when I was looking at the other question, right? Like, try not to use canned words, and maybe we need to even excavar, right? A little bit. Like why, is it really that, or is there something below the surface, right? There's something below the surface. And when you get below the surface, your answer becomes more true, and it's easier to give an honest answer. That doesn't sound so robotic. Any other questions on number 5? So far, so good. All right. So the next part, I'm gonna introduce what we call behavioral or competency-based questions. However, let's take a break first, okay? Because the next part is a little dense, okay? So let's take a 5-minute break. When we come back, I'm going to teach you about these kinds of questions and some strategies on how to answer them. And then we'll finish with the last 2 questions that are more normal, okay? All right, so let me see here. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. I'm going to put a timer on my screen here. Where are you? All right, there we go. Okay, all right. So the next part, I believe, is probably the most important part, okay? And these kinds of questions are becoming more and more common. And they're called behavioral questions or competency-based questions. Right? And there are many kinds of these questions, but knowing how to answer them is very important. And now what I'm going to try to teach you in a short amount of time is a lot of information. Okay? And so I think really what I want to leave with you is an idea of these kinds of questions and what the philosophy behind them is and what people are expecting. There are plenty of resources online, YouTube videos, and things like that that you can further explore, but I really want to introduce them to you and give you an idea of what is expected. And so the overlying idea behind these questions is that past performance is always the best predictor of future performance. Okay, so how you did something before, right, or how you reacted, or how you addressed a problem, or how you solved a conflict in your past is the best predictor of how you will behave in the future. All right, and these are the kinds of questions that I often focused on when I interviewed people, right? Because I wanted to know how this person would be in the real life situation. Right? And so it's all, the resume is all well and good. The technical aspects, yes, they have the knowledge. But for example, in my company, we were dealing with $1 million shipments of perishable pharmaceuticals that I needed to get from Boston, for example, to Bogota in 4 days, right? So it was high pressure, it was high stress, there was no room for error. And so I often ask people questions to try and understand how would they be with that kind of pressure on top of them in the real environment, okay? And so again, these are used to gauge how a candidate will perform, right? And they often start with phrases like, describe a situation where you had to do this, or can you give an example of when you did this or had this, right? And with these, you need to tell a story, right? You need to tell a story, and that's what we're going to look at today. That's why in the activity that we did, I had you practicing the narrative tenses, right? I had you practicing narrative tenses, use of the past tenses, right? And then basically how to construct a story. Because in order to answer these questions, we need to tell a story. And there is a structure, right? And there's a structure, right? And the story demonstrates what we're like in real situations, how we have behaved, how we have performed. It gives evidence of the skills that are needed in the job. The questions are generally related to what the expectations of the jobs are. And you need to use examples, real-world examples of how you performed. Okay? And each question has a motive and psychology behind it, right? There's something they want to know. And your job is to tell them that something in a way that convinces them and makes them feel confident and comfortable. All right? And so to try and discern what you're like in real situations, like what do you like under pressure? How would you behave if there's $1 million shipment that's going to be spoiled in customs in Bogota because you didn't put the correct paperwork with the box, right? Or how are you going to behave in a conflict with your boss? Or how are you gonna, like, what happens when you fail? What happens when you make a mistake? And how do you solve problems in your personal or professional life? These are these kinds of questions. And so there's two acronyms that are very common. And now you can Google search these and get a lot of information. Okay, one is called SARI, right? Or the other one is STAR. You may see STAR more often. They're the same, just they're acronyms, right? They're acronyms to remind you of the order, right? So situation. So for STAR, it's situation, task, action, result. For SARI, it's situation, action, result, and then interesting lesson or reflection. Okay, so it's basically the flow of your story, the beginning, the middle, and the end. As a situation, you describe the situation, right? And then you describe what the task was required or what needed to be done. And then more importantly, you tell the interview the actions you took. And then the result, which is the conclusion. And so what happened was, right? And then I like this part, this is my favorite part, the interesting lesson or reflection. And I'll show you in a minute. But basically it's like, oh, and so what I learned from this was that I always need to do this. And since that day, every time these kinds of things have happened, I react in this way. Okay, so again, I'm going to give you a lot of information. I'm going to do my best to condense this, but really what I want to leave you with is take note of these, right, and keep these in your mind because these kinds of questions are very, very, very common nowadays, okay? And so here's another way. So basically your story goes like this. The situation I was in a situation where, right, I had a conflict with a colleague. Right? We were required to deliver this project by November 15th. And on November 14th, we weren't there yet, right? So the actions that I took was, or the action or action I took was this, okay? And then what ended up happening was, that's the result. So because of the actions that I took, we were able to deliver this project on time. And the customer were very happy, and we ended up selling $10,000 more of our product, etc. What I learned was, or what was interesting about this was, what I learned was I can't depend on other people in a crunch time situation. I need to take matters into my own hands. And when I do that, I feel that I'm able to really create results. All right. So we call it the SARI, the SARI, or the STAR technique. Okay. All right. So here's an example. Oh, a failed. So tell me about a time that you failed. Okay. So tell me about a time that you failed. All right. Oh, the marketing campaign was sent out, but instead of actual names, the names were wrong. It was a failure because this. Right? And so what I did to fix it, first I owned my part in the mistake, saw what I could have done differently, regrouped, and looked for where the breakdown of communication was. Right? I tried to salvage the campaign, but the email, the actions I took was I came up with a re-engagement campaign and held a meeting and had suggestions. And the result was it was a complete success. Right? And then, are there any interesting features? Right? Oh, so what I learned was this. We learned to structure a meeting differently, Okay, so in the essence of time, right, I'll send this to you. I'm going to send this to the email group. But in the essence of time, I'm not going to read all of it, okay? But again, I just want to leave you with this is very important to prepare for. Okay, very, very important to prepare for. Let's look at some examples of the questions and the psychology behind them so you can start to recognize that and start to structure your stories, okay? So 10 cues for interviews. These are the 6, 7, and 8. For example, number 6, tell me about a time you failed at something. At work, at school, right? A time that you failed. Or 7, can you tell me about a time when you've had a conflict with somebody, right? A personal conflict, right? What do you like when there's a disagreement? What happens? How do you react? Or tell me about a time that you demonstrated leadership skills. Or it can be, tell me about a time that you had to complete a project under a very strict deadline. Or tell me about a time where you had to think of a very creative solution where nobody believed you. And even still, you had to stay with that idea. We don't know what the questions will be, generally. We don't know. But by knowing the formula, how to answer them, it'll make it easier for us to improvise, right? And we can start to build a story in the moment. Ah, yes. So there's a time when this happened, right? Yes, I remember. Yeah, a time that I failed. Yeah. So there's a time when this happened, right? And this was the situation, right? And what we needed to do was this, but it was a problem because this. So what I decided to do, the actions that I took were this, this, and this. And I got people together and I said, hey, we got to do this, right? Because I did that, right? The result was this, and we were able to do this, right? And what I learned from that experience, and something that I still carry with me today, is that this, and this, okay? So I know it's a lot, but just stay with me. So let's look at a bit of the psychology, right? What you want to do is answer their underlying question, right? So can you tell me about a time you failed, right? There's a reason they're asking you. There's a psychology. They want to know something about you, and they want to know how you'll behave in the future, right? So how you'll behave in the real world situation. So in a question like this is, how do you handle failure, right? Are you someone who's humble, accepts responsibilities, and you learn from your mistakes? Or are you someone who freaks out and loses their mind, right? Are you someone that just buckles under pressure? And are you coachable, right? Are you coachable? One more tip that comes to mind is when you have a job, later on in life when you have a job, you're going to make mistakes. Employers expect that. But they never want to see you make the same mistake twice. That's where you get fired, right? It's okay to make it once. So they want to know, if you make a mistake, will you learn from it? And can I trust you not to repeat that mistake? Okay? And these answers should be about 2 minutes long. Okay? It should be about 2 minutes long. And there are things you should practice creating these stories. You should practice creating these stories so you get used to structuring them. All right, any questions on number 6? Or any questions on this? Are you understanding more or less? Are you understanding more or less? Okay. Carolina says yes. All right. Okay, good. Sophie too. All right. Again, this in my class, a student will have a very, very important interview this week. And they sent her 5 of these questions to prepare for. Right? Luckily, they did her the favor of sending her the questions. I had never seen that before. But it was like a real world confirmation, like these happen. These kinds of questions happen, so it's good to be prepared. All right, number 7. Can you tell me about a time when you've had a conflict? Right? Work is stressful. There's a lot of ego, a lot of people, a lot of pressure, right? And conflicts happen, okay? So what the underlying psychology of a question like this is, how do you handle conflicts? What happens when you have a disagreement with your boss? Or what happens when you have a disagreement with a colleague? How do you react? How do you react? Do you accept responsibility and look for a solution? Or do you blame everybody else? No, you would never believe it. This idiot did this thing, right? This idiot did this thing, I couldn't believe it, and I had to fix all his problems, and it was a mess. Right? Or do you say, you know what? This happened, and I realized that I had a responsibility as well, right? And so they want to know, can you resolve conflicts, get over it, and move on? That's what they want to know. For me, this is an important question. This is an important question, especially if the job is high pressure, right? Can we have a disagreement and make peace and move on? Okay? And again, these stories are about 2 minutes long, right? You want to keep their attention. You want to keep your story short and sweet. All right, so far so good. Number 7. All right, let's look at number 8. Tell me about a time you demonstrated leadership skills. Okay? So again, what is the psychology? What do I want to know really? 1, are you a natural leader? I want to know that about you. Are you a leader? Can you take control of a situation when needed? Right? Are you someone who says, we need to fix this, right? And I'm going to do what I can to fix it. Or are you someone who gets nervous and shies away and backs off, right? They also want to know, could you be a future leader in the company? Could you be a future leader? Because generally your first jobs are going to be what they call entry level, right? But the idea is the company is looking for people who start in the bottom, but then work their way up and hopefully end up being managers and leaders of teams. They want to know, are you a leader? What happens when you need to take control, when you need to take charge? Do you enjoy it? Okay. So again, with these three questions, or any of these kinds of questions, right, there's an underlying psychology. So before you answer the question, think about, what are they really asking me? What are they really asking? What do they want to see? Right? And so you should have some stories. And very often, the stories that you have, right? So let's say, for example, that you have stories for these three, right? Very often, you can apply them to other questions, right? You can apply, I've seen that with my students, right? So for example, tell me about a time when you failed, right? Can also be applied to, tell me about a time where you solved a problem creatively, or tell me about a time when you had to deliver a project in a very tight deadline. Okay, so having some stories from your life can very often be interchangeable. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that you do want to prepare for before an interview. Okay, and you can practice them. I recommend you write them, you practice speaking them. Okay, any questions on these? Any questions? Okay, I know it's a lot, okay, but the biggest thing to take away from is expect these kinds of questions. You will very probably get some, at least two, maybe three. And if you know how to answer them, what did I do with the format? 1 second, sorry guys. What did I do with it? Okay, this. If you know how to answer them, right, it'll help you with your nervousness, right? Because you'd be nervous. We're all nervous in interviews, right? So if you go, oh, this is one of those questions Noel said. What was the acronym? Sorry, STAR. Oh, that's right, STAR. That's right. Situation, task, action. Okay. Situation, task, action, result. Okay. So I was in a situation where what I did was the result was this, right? And what I learned was this, right? So if you remember the acronym, you can breathe, right? Breathe, take a breath, go, yes, I can answer that question. And then you tell your story. Okay? Any questions on these? Any concerns? Any doubts? Okay. All right. I know it's a lot, but we only have like an hour. So, Sophie.
Yes, hi, no, I started a bit late, so I don't know if you already answered this, but do we actually have like 1 or 2 minutes to think about it, or do we go straight to answering?
Yes. Yeah, you can ask for time. Yes. Of course. Yes, of course. I think that leads into one thing that I really like in interview is be human. Right? Be human. Right? Be human. Like we get so nervous. The other day I did an interview with a student and he was talking to me like this. He was talking and he wasn't looking, he was like literally he was like looking. I was like, "Are you reading? Are you reading?" He's like, "No, teacher." I was like, "I'm just really nervous." I was like, "Okay, hold on a minute." Right? Hold on. Breathe. Shake your arms. Right? Breathe, shake your arms. Right? Look at me. Right? Look at me like we're just talking, right? We're having a conversation. Right? And so that's a good question. Can I have a second to think about it? And they'll always say, yes, of course. They'll always say that, right? You can say, yes, of course you can have a second, right? So you can take a minute. You can take a minute to think about it, Sophie, of course, right? And then in that minute, you go, okay, STAR, right? Or SARI, situation, task, action, result. But like I said before, it's always good to have some prepared because they're very often interchangeable, right? And it's always good to think about 3 situations in your life, right? Some positive, some negative, right? Where you did something extraordinary or you learned something extraordinary. Right? It's good to have those in mind and practice beforehand.
Okay.
But yes, you can always ask for time. Any other questions? I'm gonna turn the light on. It's getting dark. Hold on. Okay. All right. So again, there's a lot of resources online. So if you just simply search for behavioral interview questions or competency-based questions or the STAR method or the SARI method, you'll find tons of resources, okay? Tons of resources. And like I said before, a student of mine has an interview this week, and that her interview is based on these kinds of questions, okay? So we've done a lot of practice. All right, ready? Last three, last two. So that's 7, 8, now number 9. Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Or where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Okay. So again, there is an underlying psychology to this question. Right? They want to know something. Right? So the first thing that you want to realize is if they hire you, they are making an investment in you. It's financial, it's time, right? They need to use employees to train you. They need to get you on board, right? And they want a return on their investment, right? It costs a lot of money to hire somebody. They want a return. They also want to see if you have ambitions to grow, right? Your first job is going to be entry level, right? They want to see if you, hey, you know what? Is this someone who's content with that kind of job, or are they looking to grow? Are they looking to grow in the company, maybe become a team leader, and maybe get more responsibility, and then maybe become a manager, right? And they want to know that you'll be around for more than 1 year, even if it's not true, okay? So this is the one question, I think, where it's okay not to be completely honest, okay? Not to be completely honest, right? So don't be completely honest if you can't. If you can, great. But very often, a lot of my students have plans, right? They have plans, right? Most of you go, oh, you know, like, what do you want to do after you graduate? Oh, I'm going to work for a year and then I'm going to go do a master's degree in Belgium, right? Or I'm going to do a master's degree in the United States. Or I'm really trying to move to Canada as soon as I possibly can, right? Or, you know what? I really want to have my own business. You know, like I'm doing the interview, I'm getting a job now, but what I really want to have is my own business that will compete directly with you at some day, right? So those things you don't want to tell them, okay? You don't want to tell them. So don't be completely honest, all right? And this one, there's basically a canned answer, right? And it's basically, yes, I'm starting with your company. I plan to stay and grow with the company, right? You'll be my number one priority. And hopefully I'll move up and take on more responsibilities. This is a short answer, right? About a minute. It's about a minute. So for example, hey, Noel, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Well, you know, obviously this is an entry-level position I'm starting at. But, you know, my career goal is to become a leader, to become a manager in the company. Hopefully I have my own team, take on more responsibilities, to learn. Maybe I could work in another office, right? And so basically they just want to know, you want to appease their concerns, right? You want to make them feel confident that if I hire you, you are going to stay, okay? And you'll be around for some time before moving on. All right? Do you understand what I mean by that? You understand what I mean by that? So even if you plan to leave, don't tell them. That's private information. Right? I want to go to Canada? Nope. Not going to Canada. Master's degree? Nope. 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 I'm going to stay here. I'm going to work. I'm going to grow. And eventually I'll be the CEO. Okay? That's number 9. Number 9. Any questions on this one? Any questions? Hey, Sanjay.
Hi, Noel. How are you?
All right, man. We're just wrapping up. All right, number 10, the last one. Okay. Do you have any questions for me? All right. That's all. You almost always get that question. Don't ever say no. Don't say no. 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 Don't say no. Right. So.
No.
Yeah. You don't want to say no. You want to have questions. Okay. You want to have at least one, maybe 2. Okay. And I'm gonna show you a link where you can find a couple examples. All right. So my light's playing tricks. All right, so with the questions that you ask, don't really ask personal questions. You don't, like if you imagine an interviewer, right? Like you don't really want to get too personal with them. They're super focused on what they're doing. All right. And so it's like if you ask them a weird question, it can kind of sometimes cause a weird reaction, or they don't have the answer, right? And so you don't want to ask them questions that are difficult to answer. Maybe philosophical or something that's like super down the future, right? Because we're not interviewing them, right? And we want to avoid long, confusing questions. So you want to have 1 or 2 questions prepared, right? And there should be ones that you really do want the answers to. And remember, this is your last interaction with them, right? So it's basically the last memory you're creating with them, right? So if you ask them something weird or make them feel uncomfortable, right, they're going to remember that. Like it's kind of like that feeling, right? Like that weird feeling you'll leave them with. And like, hey, how was your interview with Sandra Rodriguez? Well, it was cool, but I don't know, like she asked me this weird question at the end about, like how are these projects, and I don't know. It was just, I didn't know what to say. I felt real uncomfortable, right? So you do want to be conscious of that. Like the interviewer is hyper focused on analyzing you, right? And so you do want to kind of be a little sympathetic to that, but you do want questions, okay? So I'm going to send you a link. Hold on. Where is it? Okay, here's a link that I think has some good options. Okay, and again, you can look for more. All right, you can look for more. It's from the Balanced Careers. We can take a look at this together. We have a little time. All right, so best questions to ask. All right, what and what not to ask. Okay. Generally, the questions that I like are the ones that have to do directly with you or directly with the job. Okay, directly with you. So, for example, so if I am hired, when would I start? Right? If I am hired, when would I start? Or is there a process for onboarding? Like if I'm hired, what is the training process like? How do I get up to speed? Okay. Or if I am hired, how does one advance in the company? Are there opportunities for promotions? Okay. These duties and requirements questions I like as well. Okay. So, how would you describe the responsibilities of the position? What is it like day to day? How would you describe a typical day? That's an okay question. Right? Or office structure. What's the culture like? Is it a friendly culture? Do coworkers go out for drinks after? Like something like that, like culture questions or structure questions. All right. Those are kind of like where I limit it to. But here is a list that you can use. Okay, all of them are okay. All right. And again, what I do recommend. So save this link for later for you. But what I do recommend is have 1 or 2, right? And there should be something that you would really like to know, right? Don't just ask them just to have them talking, right? So think of something like, hey, what do I really want to know? What do I really want to know before I leave today? I have a chat question. Okay. Yeah. Any questions on this one? Any questions on asking questions? No? All right. So again, always have at least one. Don't say no. Don't say no. Always have at least one. Okay. And try and ask a question that leaves them with a good memory of you. All right. 3 more tips that I thought of that you should keep in mind, okay? That are not here. 1, be on time. Be on time, okay? Do your interviews. That means 15 minutes early. Being on time means 15 minutes early. All right? Being on time 15 minutes. 2, always, always, always dress correctly. Okay, there's a famous saying in English, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Okay, so it's okay to even overdress rather than underdress. Okay, so always dress appropriately for the task. And 3, something to keep in mind. If when you are offered interviews and they call you and they go, hey, Camila, how are you? My name's Noel. I'm calling to schedule an interview with you. Oh, yeah, great. Oh, great. Wonderful. Yeah, so I have open dates. I have Tuesday at 8 a.m., Tuesday at 10 a.m., and then Thursday from 10 to 2. Which one would be good for you? Always choose the earliest date possible. Okay? When you are offered dates to interview, always try and be the first one, if possible. So if they offer you 2 days, Tuesday or Thursday, Tuesday. If they say 10 a.m. or 2 p.m., 10 a.m. You want to be the first one in the door. You want to be the first one in the door. It's psychological, right? Because when you interview, you then become the measuring stick. Everybody else who follows you is matching up to you. They're going to use you as a reference. They're going to use you as a reference, right? And 2, interviewing people is exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting, right? If I'm doing interviews all week, right, sometimes I will do the easiest choice. I say, you know what? It's Thursday. I'm tired. I remember that girl Maria from Tuesday. She was wonderful. Let's just do Maria because I don't know. I don't know anymore, right? I'm saturated, right? So it's a psychological thing, right? It's humanity. So keep that in mind in the future. When they offer you dates, always pick the earliest one possible. You want to be the first one in the door. Okay? All right. That's it. Final thoughts. Final thoughts. All right. So interviewing, like I said before, interviewing is a skill, right? Which many people don't have. They don't have, right? And so the more you practice, the more results you will see. And there's many reasons for this. Like 1, you have answers that are prepared, right? And it makes you sound well prepared, right? And it makes your answers, gives you better answers. 2, we all get so nervous, right? And we forget stuff, right? Or we start talking too quickly, or we start sweating, right? And so being prepared helps with that, right? Helps with that. Like anything else that we do, right? More practice leads to success. Okay, so I highly recommend that you start preparing these questions in Spanish if need be, right? And then English if you're going to have an interview. But you definitely want to have some answers already prepared. And that's kind of it, right? The interview is what gets you the job, okay? And so I highly recommend that you do take the time to do this, okay? And that's it. That's all I have for you today. Before we go, are there any questions? Are there any questions? Any questions? No? Was this useful? Did you learn something? Did you learn something? You did? Okay. All right. So I'll be sending this presentation to the email group as well as a link to the recording so you can save it and have it. For in 2 years, you have your internship coming up and you go, oh my God, remember that thing I did? And then you can open it and remind yourself of what you did. Now, as always, it's time to get to work. All right? Time to get to work. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And in the future, if you ever have any questions or need advice or want me to check something for you, please send me a message. You can also get me on email at the Extranal as well. I'm happy to help. And that's all. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have a nice day.
Have a
Bye,
nice day.
everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much.
That's
Thank
great,
you.
Noel. Thank
Bye.
you. Everyone, good
Bye,
evening.
Maria.
Bye-bye.
Bye.